Welcome again. Uncertain times ahead for people in Mariupol. Azov, Russian President Vladimir Putin orders his troops not to storm the Azovstal steel plant, where the last group of Ukrainian fighters is holding out. But said to seal it up so even a fly cannot escape that Russia has control of the strategic port city.
But in a news conference, President Zelensky responded to remarks by Russia's defense minister, Sergei Shoigu, that its forces control most of Mariupol. Zelensky said that Russia controls most of the city, but Ukrainian troops remain in part of it. The Ukrainian president also said that around 120,000 civilians are blocked from leaving the besieged city of Mariupol.
Right, speaking at a briefing during a visit to Kyiv, Denmark's prime minister also said her country would give further military aid worth $90 million to Ukraine and support further sanctions against Russia. It's also as U.S. President Joe Biden announced an additional $800 million in security assistance for Ukraine. President Biden says the aid, including heavy artillery weapons, ammunition and tactical drones, will be sent directly to the front lines of freedom.
Here's more on the situation on ground.
President
Vladimir Putin has ordered the Russian military to cancel plans to storm the Azovstal plant in the Ukrainian port city of Mariupol and says he wanted it to continue to be hermetically blockaded instead. Putin gave the order to his defense minister, who had previously told Putin that more than 2,000 Ukrainian fighters were still holed up in the vast plant, which has a large underground component to it. Putin says his decision not to storm the Azovstal plant was motivated by the desire to safeguard the lives of Russian soldiers.
Всем, кто ранен, будет оказана квалифицированная медицинская помощь.
However, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov has been speaking on its latest proposals to Ukraine. He says that Moscow was still waiting for Kyiv's response after it had handed a document in connection with peace talks to the Ukrainian side. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says on Wednesday he had not seen or heard about a document that the Kremlin said it had sent to Ukraine. But Peskov says Russia-Ukraine talks are continuing. Ukraine is ready to hold special talks with Russia in Mariupol, according to negotiator. Meanwhile, Ukraine says it is ready to hold a special round of negotiations with Russia in the besieged city of Mariupol without any conditions. Its lead negotiator, Mikhailo Podolyak, tweeted that the talks could be one-on-one, two-on-two, to save our guys, military, civilians, children, the living and the wounded. Ukraine's president has said that about 1,000 civilians remain trapped at the Azovstal steel plant, where Ukrainian forces are making their last stand in the besieged city. Yesterday, large black clouds of smoke billowed from the steelworks in Mariupol as a few dozen evacuees queued to get into buses, some clutching luggage or carrying small pets in their arms. They departed from a planned evacuation point to Ukraine-controlled territory. Pensioner Tamara, 64, says she was going to stay with her sister in Ukraine's Zaporizhia. She was leaving the city with her husband, daughter, son-in-law and grandson. Today, Spanish and Danish prime ministers visited the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv to support the Ukrainian president. Sanchez had already arrived in Kyiv, and the Denmark's prime minister too. Discussions include further support for Ukrainians and the prosecution of war crimes and human rights violations. Germany's foreign minister Annalena Baerbock says there are no taboos for Germany when it comes to weaponry needed by Ukraine. Speaking in Tallinn, Baerbock says Germany was looking into what extra maintenance, murder and Leopard tanks would need before they would be able to be used on the ground in Ukraine. She added that the German army itself faces kit shortages for its current missions, and Germany was backfilling donations of old Soviet kits made by allies.
The VOA's Anna Chernikova joins us now. She's in Kyiv. Anna, thanks again for joining us on the program. And talk to us about Mariupol and what we're hearing, especially about the command, the order that President Putin gave to troops there to block off the industrial area so that a fly cannot pass through.
Hello. Yeah, situation at the Mariupol Azovstal plant is very complicated. This is the main resistance center for Ukrainian forces at the moment. As what we know from President Putin's speech during his meeting with his Minister of Defense, as we understood, he doesn't really care about what's going to happen to people who are still there, both civilians and military soldiers, because as we know, Ukrainian soldiers, there are around 2,000 soldiers present at the Azovstal plant. Around 400 are injured. And additionally, Ukrainian soldiers also keep their dead friends and dead colleagues in order to get them out and bring them back home to their parents to be, buried as it should be. So what we understand for the moment is that Russian forces would withdraw from, so they are controlling most part of Mariupol, except of the area where Azovstal plant is located. And they're moving now forward to the northeast part in order to join Russian troops there for the huge Donbas battle, which is already happening, and as we see, the escalation also is coming. So this is basically what we can see, and this is exactly what President Zelensky also confirmed and made a comment during the press conference with Prime Ministers of Spain and Denmark.
And that city, Mariupol, currently has 120,000 civilians. Well, in that, the last stronghold, of course, waiting to get out. But then some people were able to make it out yesterday, right?
Yesterday, it was confirmed that 90 buses would get people out. 90 buses, it's around 6,000 people. But unfortunately, this agreement didn't work again, and only 4 buses were able to leave. We don't have, for the moment, confirmed number of people who managed to get out, but, well, apparently it's really not much. But yes, some certain amount managed to get out, and they have arrived to Zaporizhia, or they are arriving at the moment. And yeah, in general, 120,000 civilians remain in the city of Mariupol. More than 1,000 of them are located in at Azovstal plant, which they use as a shelter.
So it's still a very dicey situation for those who are still holed up there. But then Ukraine also says that it's ready to hold a special round of negotiations with Russia in the city of Mariupol without any conditions. What exactly did he mean by that?
Mr. Podolak and Mr. Arahamia, who are members of the negotiation team, negotiations which took part in Istanbul in particular, they announced they are ready to meet with their counterpartners from Russia, also representatives of the negotiation group. They're ready to meet in Mariupol and to come there and negotiate exactly what President Zelensky also is talking about, and Ukraine is trying to get from Russian side the evacuation. So Ukrainian side is ready to go there and discuss evacuations there if this is the only way. So Ukraine is open for any kind of meeting or any kind of conditions in terms of negotiations, but Ukraine wants to get people out, and this is the main goal. And as President Zelensky also mentioned today, there are only two options, either military or diplomatic. And diplomatic, for the moment, everything is done, everything possible is done, and Ukraine is ready for any diplomatic way to get this, to get this question under control and to get people out. But for the moment, it's very difficult to get any agreements with Russian side, because even evacuation is not capped. The promise is not capped.
And we heard also today from Kremlin spokesman that Moscow is saying it's still waiting for Ukrainian response to its latest proposals. And, you know, one begins to wonder what exactly, if it's the same thing that Russia has continued to maintain with Donbass and then Ukraine's status. But tell us more about that press conference today with President Zelensky.
What we know that after the latest Istanbul meeting, Ukraine prepared certain draft of the agreement. So Ukraine proposed and put down main points that Ukrainian government and society is ready to discuss in terms of reaching any type of agreement. Peaceful agreement. Russia took some time to learn and study this draft, and as we know from the official comments from Ukrainian side, that they got certain comments on that from Russian side, and now Ukraine is studying these comments. So this is the only what we know, and for the moment we don't have a particular details on which comment, what exactly the comments from Russian side are. And as Mr. Podolak also mentioned, that Ukraine would definitely reply, but it would also take some time.
Anna, thanks for bringing us up to speed. Once again, do stay safe in Kyiv.
Thank you.
We'll come all the way down to Africa, Ethiopia to be exact, drawn by rumors on social media. Young men and old, many with their military records in hand, gathered outside the Russian embassy in the capital Addis Ababa with hopes of fighting for Moscow in Ukraine.
Despite the Russian embassy denying recruiting Ethiopian fighters, the Ethiopian men continue to gather in a bid to volunteer.
Social media rumor of a $2,000 payment to join the Russian military and the possibility of work in Russia after the war inspired some Ethiopian men to queue up outside the Russian embassy in Addis Ababa. Many parts of Ethiopia are ridden by conflict, and annual inflation hovers around 30%. So many here say they are eager to leave the country.
Inflation is rising day by day. Life is very hard here. So I am willing to leave Ethiopia to support the Russian government in whatever way I can. I want to go and fight along Russians.
The reason I want to go to Russia is not because I want to fight Ukraine, but it is because I am not benefiting from my country.
The rumor followed news reports in March that Russian President Vladimir Putin had given the green light for up to 16,000 volunteers from the Middle East to be deployed alongside Russian-backed rebels to fight in Ukraine. The Russian embassy issued a statement on Tuesday saying that it's not recruiting fighters and that Ethiopians who showed up outside were well-wishers expressing solidarity and support for the Russian Federation. Ethiopia has called on all sides in the war to exercise restraint and did not vote on a UN General Assembly resolution condemning the February 24 invasion of Ukraine, which Russia calls a special military operation to demilitarize the country. But many in Ethiopia voiced solidarity with Russia, which has enjoyed close relations with the Horn of Africa nation since the Soviet era.
And before the war knocked on the door of this soft toys factory, which we will see in a moment, in Ukraine's northern town of Nzinin, it was busy manufacturing toys of all shapes and sizes since 1998. But when Russia launched its offensive in Ukraine on February 24, owners of Kupi Statia factory and workers sat down to brainstorm how to adjust their production to keep employees as well as help the country at war. An idea of new line of wartime toys arose. Head of factory sales department said the sad news about the beginning of the war and about occupiers encircling their territories hurt everyone, and it was painful to feel the grief that overwhelmed them. She says toy Antonov 225 plane, also known as Maria, which is Ukrainian for dream, was the first one to be manufactured. Maria cargo plane, the heaviest aircraft in the world, was destroyed by a Russian attack on Hostomel airport, was a source of Ukraine's national pride.
And like Batman, forming the Justice League of Superheroes, or Iron Man helping assemble the Avengers, is what comic book editor Scott Donbier needed to put together a team of stars. The call went out quickly, and Donbier quickly signed up the biggest names in the U.S. comic book industry to collaborate on a special anthology to raise money for Ukrainian war refugees. The result is Comics for Ukraine, Sunflower Seeds, a 96-page book produced by best writers, artists, colorists, letterers, designers and editors that Donbier could find. Proceeds estimated to reach $200,000 to $500,000 will go to Operation USA, a Los Angeles-based disaster relief agency, raising money for Ukrainian war refugees. Over 5 million Ukrainians have fled abroad since Russia invaded on February 24. So far, 2 days after launching, it had raised $67,000 on the Zoop crowdfunding site. The publication date remains uncertain, depending on how much is raised through pre-orders after a month. But as many comic books do, it says the Ukraine project has an origin story.
Well, number one, Novak Djokovic says Wimbledon decision to ban Russian and Belarusian players over Moscow's invasion of Ukraine is crazy. Wimbledon announced yesterday it had barred all Russian and Belarusian players from this year's championships due to the invasion. The grass courts Grand Slam is the first tennis tournament to ban individual competitors from the two countries, meaning men's world number 2 Daniil Medvedev from Russia and women's 4th-ranked Arina Sabalenka of Belarus will be banned from the June 27 to July 10 tournament. Djokovic told reporters at the Serbia Open, an ATP 250 event in Belgrade, "I will always condemn war. I will never support war, be myself a child of war."